Welcome to Every Day is a New Day.
Kim O'Neill from KimO'NeillCoaching.com.
We are live. Hello and welcome to another episode of Every Day is a New Day, where I have inspired conversations with awesome people about moving forward and choosing to embrace a positive outlook. I'm your host, Kim O'Neill, and I'm also a personal empowerment and interview confidence coach. And if you're watching us live, then say hello. We'd love to connect with you. You have found us on Facebook at Kim O'Neill Coaching, or on one of the other pages this has been shared out to. And if you're watching the replay, then you have found us on YouTube or over on bingenetworks.tv on the Every Day is a New Day channel. Either way, we'd love to connect with you and answer your live questions or replay questions as we go. So thank you for being here. With that said, today's guest, and I'll read her bio to you in a second, but let me just go ahead and introduce her now. Today's guest is Laura Jack. So hello, Laura.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for being here. So let me go ahead and pull up your bio here and read to our awesome audience just a little bit about you, and then, of course, you can elaborate. So Laura Jack is the author of the #1 bestseller, The Compassion Code, How to Say the Right Thing When the Wrong Thing Happens. She teaches compassionate communication and how we can all relate to one another more effectively during the challenging moments in life. Her mission is to cultivate a culture of compassion, starting with self, and to create a better understanding of loss and its accompanying grief. And of course, you can find out more by going to laurajack.com. So that's just a little bit about Laura. Yeah, right? That's her.
30 sentences. That's it.
I actually love how you did that, though, because it's not only succinct, but it's to the point. It really says what you do. And it's beautiful and it's very clear.
Thank you. That's great. Because I teach people how to do that. So that's important.
Yeah, good job. So we do have some guests here with us. So let's just say a quick hello to them. We've got Cheryl Levy with us. So hello, Cheryl. Thank you for being here.
Cheryl.
And I see we've also got Serenity with us. Aw, so awesome to see you.
Serenity.
So awesome to see both of you. So yes, if you have questions, do go ahead and put those down in the chat, and we would love to answer those as we go. But let's get started by hearing a little bit more about who Laura Jack is and what she does. So would you like to elaborate on your awesome bio, Laura?
I feel like it already said it all. No, I'm just kidding. Sure, I'd be happy to talk about myself more.
Well, how about telling us, how did you get to, doing this work? How did you get to this place?
I think sometimes parts of you are always there. It's like part of me was always a coach, and part of me was always a healer, and part of me was always a lover of humans. And then some of it just happened through the circumstances of my life. So for those of you who don't know me or haven't read anything about me, my mom was killed in an accident in 2008, January of 2008. So it's been 10 years this past January. And that has been that experience, the tragedy and the recovery and the transformation that all existed within that experience has really informed a huge part of who I am now, and who I've become as a grown woman, and who I am as a coach, and who I am as a mother, and as a wife, and as a friend, and as anything else that I do in my life. And so one of the things that I've kind of realized in the last 10 years is that before my mom died, I was one person, and then after she died, I was somebody else. And I actually like who I am better now. I think that her death, while tragic and devastating, has made me the person I am today, and has given me so many tools and put me on this journey of personal growth that I don't know that I would have been on as intimately as I have been because of her death. And so, her death led to me just doing anything and everything to help myself heal, which started with massage school, that led to Pilates instructor, that led to health coaching, that led to life coaching, that led to transformational coaching, that led to grief recovery and beyond. And since then, so many other things have transpired that I wasn't planning. But it just has really been a huge, I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's shaped everything that I've done. Her death and my journey to healing has been a huge part of me then being able to serve and support others. Right. But you can't teach from, as Marianne Williamson says, she says, you can't teach from the crucifixion, you teach from the resurrection. And I feel like it was me going through that journey first before I could actually help other people.
Wow. Yeah, you're really good at talking too, Laura. That's so cheesy, but I'm just going to say that. Wasn't that good for those listening? Okay. Laura,
You're so cute.
I love how you shared that journey. That was beautiful to see the progression, how it went from massage therapy into coaching. And then it sounds like you kind of, I don't know, you sort of, I guess, of course, went through your own healing, but then sort of looped back around to the grief part of it, even though you're healed. It's interesting to sort of see how things cycle like that.
And just as a little tiny aside, because I'm kind of excited about this transition that I'm in currently, what's been so weird in the last 6 or 8 months has been like, it feels like the grief work is becoming like the foundation, but not the not the front end. Like I've been leading with grief for the last 7 years. That's been like my go-to. It's been like how I really teach and coach and am with people. And I think in the last 8 months, ever since her 10-year anniversary, and somebody else pointed it out to me, was like, oh, it's been 10 years. What a perfect time for you to transition into something else. But my book came out last August, The Compassion Code, How to Say the Right Thing When the Wrong Thing Happens. And that really, like, one of the things that I'm moving forward with is how important it is to have compassionate communication in your living relationships. And so that's kind of where I'm moving into now, because a lot of grief actually happens in living relationships. We grieve over things that change, right? So one of the many exciting pieces of the work I get to do now is that I'm helping people who are in living relationships heal from the grief that they've experienced, because either like a divorce or an estrangement, or maybe that things are just not turning out the way they kind of hoped or thought they would. And that's been what's been lighting me up in the last 8 months or so.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So absolutely want to hear more about that. But before we go there, I would love to know, how have your views on death changed from before your mom passed to after? Or have they? Maybe they haven't.
Oh, they have to, right? Like when you go through such a major tragedy, she was hit and run over by a car. So she wasn't sick. Like it was just like this sudden tragic, wait, what? Like, wow. All of a sudden, one day you're there, one day you're not there. And it's so disruptive to your whole ecosystem because it doesn't feel real. And so for me, I think, thank you. And I think that before she died, I had a fear of her dying, if that makes sense. Like I had a really good friend whose mom died a few years before mine, suddenly as well. And I remember thinking and like totally abandoning ship. Like I did not call, I didn't reach out. And I actually talk about it in my book because I was what I consider a really bad friend at the time. And with some self-compassion, I understand that I was just scared and I didn't know what to do or say. And part of it was because I was like, if anything ever happened to my mom, I would just be crushed. I would be so devastated and I wouldn't know what to do or how to be or how to go on ultimately. And, now that she's gone and truly because of the work that I do, the grief work and the coaching work, I feel like this sums it up. I had a dream about maybe a couple of years after I started doing the grief recovery work. And in the dream, my husband died. And I was devastated in my dream, of course. But I was holding the purple book. The grief recovery book is a purple book.
Okay.
And I was holding the book. And in the dream, I was like, well, at least I know what to do. And I think that my feelings about now and loss in general, much that like I bite it. I don't want to go through loss because I want to live a joyful day-to-day life. But I also know that order to go through enough tools and resources to help myself heal again. Does that make sense?
A little bit. So the audio is cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I don't know.
No, don't need to be sorry. But if that's why I'm like, not sure what to say next. Let's see. Can you repeat?
Yeah, so tell me what you caught.
I'm not sure what I caught at this point. So, okay, take us back to, because I have a feeling this happened for the audience too. So take us back to, you had this dream and you were holding the purple book and you said, but it's okay, I know what to do. And then after that?
Okay, so basically the feeling now is that to have more losses, I feel comfortable and confident that I know what, when, and if they happen. And so how I feel now before is that I feel comfortable in challenging situations. I wrote I feel comfortable through that I'm going to inevitably go through other losses in my life. I hope not, but like, it's just part of being a human.
Right. And
so I have to trust and know that I have the tools and resources to help myself. I've gone through such an immense tragedy myself, helped thousands of other people through grief recovery and through transformational coaching. So that's kind of, does that for me that time? Was that better?
Yeah, it was still a little bit, it's all good. I think we caught all that.
A little spotty.
So,
okay.
We have Serenity all the way in, I think she's in Australia, right? Or New Zealand, saying,
she's in Australia. Perfectly. Oh, good. Oh, good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's great to hear. And we've got Cheryl commenting, Laura, I am building my business much like yours. I am certified through the QSCA. So that's an organization we went through. And she's also a grief recovery specialist. So,
oh, yay. Awesome. That's so cool.
So wonderful. So I love that you guys are there commenting. Please keep the comments coming. And if you have questions for Laura, do go ahead and put those down below. But so Laura, what you do just sounds so rewarding. I mean, helping people move through their grief. Are there any stories that you can share with us of where someone was once in a place of just not knowing what to do and you were able to help them move beyond that? And what that was like for them?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I have so many testimonials of people who have shared on my website, so I can safely share their stories because they already shared it in a public forum. I had one gentleman who was incredibly amazing. He actually was in one of my first workshops I ever led, and he and his son had gotten into an accident 20 years earlier, and his son died, and he lived. And he was basically like everything else in his life fell apart because he lost his son and because he didn't know how to cope with that. And he chose to avoid it because we're taught to avoid our feelings in our culture and society, and so he went through grief recovery with me. And afterwards he said, for the first time since his death, I'm able to say my son's name without crying, without hiding. So one of the things that was so amazing is that he ended up coming and becoming a certified grief recovery specialist because he was so healed and helped himself and was able to begin healing his own life that he wanted to help other people, even though he had his own company. Like it wasn't doing it for work. He was doing it for pleasure of like forwarding that gift on to others. And so that was one situation where he went from not even being able to say his son's name and like having cut off everyone in his life from that point, including his wife, everyone who was like involved, to like then wanting his story shouted from the rooftops. Because he wanted other people to know that it was possible to heal and don't wait. Because in the waiting, it's like if you were to cut yourself, if you wait till it's infected and like really, really, really messed up, you might end up having to get an amputation or to, potentially even die from infection Whereas if you deal with it, head on, you clean it, you care for it, you stitch it up, you put on fresh gauze, you continue taking care of it, then it can actually heal. But don't wait, because the longer you wait, the more you avoid, the more, which is what we kind of are all taught, is like, just avoid your feelings, don't feel them, it's too scary, it's too hard. The more you actually embrace them sooner, the more effectively you can heal more quickly. And people are like, there's no timeline on grief. And I agree with that. Like, everybody's experience is unique. And I always say, and this is something that is one of the myths of grief, is that it's not about the time at all. It's actually about the practice. Like, it's about what you do within the time that matters. It's not about the time itself.
Nice. So and I love that metaphor about bandaging the wound and taking care of it. So that man, he had taken 20 years before he got to that point to see a coach. And then how long was it from when he started seeing you to when he felt he was?
Well, he went through the 8-week program,
okay.
8 weeks. And then he went, and then that was it. Like,
wow.
It's not like therapy where there's like a long-term, relationship like that. It's actually a short-term relationship where you go through and then you're given a set of tools that you can continue using for different losses in your life. So I use the tools for all my losses, like even my living relationships where they're just not in a place that I like the relationship as much as I would want. I call it clearing the emotional clutter, right? So I like to clear the emotional clutter so that I can have better relationships with the people in my life who are still living, and let go of the pain of the past. If there's a relationship that's no longer part of my day-to-day life, whether it's a living person or somebody who's died, I want to clear that stuff out so that I don't have to carry this huge, heavy weight around with me.
That's amazing to hear that he went from 20 years of hanging on to that to within 8 weeks.
And it's the beginning, wow. Right? It's not like he was healed and it's a magic potion, but he was on his way. It was, right. He was, at the beginning after of his journey, rather than feeling stuck. Okay, now I know what to do. When new things come up, I know what to do with them. When, when I'm feeling sad, I know what to do with those feelings. When I see a kid who and married and my son's not here to get married, and know what to do with those feelings, how to process them. I don't get stuck within me so that I can let them go and be joyful in my life. And remember my son fondly rather than with such deep sadness and pain.
Right. Right. I love it. And then Laura, and for those that are watching us, just so you know, I am on my end, at least, still getting some of the audio and video. So if my reactions seem a little delayed or something, then that might be why. But let's go ahead, and we've got a question here. This let's take a look at this one. So Serenity is asking, what is the first simple step we can take during the traumatic times of our lives that lead us in the direction back to vibrant wellness?
That's such a great question. I love that you said simple step, Serenity, because I always talk about baby steps. I have actually a little program called the ABCs of Surviving to Thriving. And the first thing is acknowledgement and awareness. So A is acknowledgement and awareness of what you're actually going through. And B is baby steps. So the A is just being aware of that you're actually grieving, that you're having a hard time, that it's challenging, and that it's okay. So the first step in reality is just normalizing what you're going through. So say, for example, you're at work and you're acting like a jerk, okay? Because you're having a bad day. And then somebody's like, why is so-and-so being such a jerk? And if you were to hear that, you'd be like, well, because I'm going through this and this and this and this and this. My husband and I are having problems. I'm going through this, or whatever it is. And you have this whole laundry list of grieving experiences that you're experiencing, that you're going through. And if I were to talk to that person, I'd be like, oh, it's so normal that you're feeling the ways that you're feeling. What a normal and natural reaction. You're going through a tremendous amount of pain. And so the fact that you are grieving means that you're human. And so it's good that you're recognizing that. So the first step is just acknowledging that what you're going through is actually normal and not making yourself bad or wrong for having all the feelings that you're having, whatever they are, whether they're sadness or relief or anger or frustration or devastation or whatever they may be. And usually they're a mixture of emotions, because that's what grief actually is. And so it's really, I think the first step is really just that acknowledgement and that self-compassion piece of like, what I'm going through is actually normal, and I'm not actually being a jerk. I'm feeling a lot of feelings. And the more we actually allow ourselves to feel the feelings, the better off we are. And then the second step is just baby steps, which is to just take tiny care of ourselves every day, whether it's taking a shower, whether it's, getting a manicure, whether it's going and playing golf or doing something that fills you up, just a tiny. And we go through a tragedy. The baby steps are usually smaller than that, like showering a step, because
Right.
sometimes you don't even feel like getting out of bed. So like brushing your teeth, shaving your legs, if you're a man, shaving your face, like getting a haircut, doing things that are just like physically helpful, they translate into emotional health as well. And so just starting with that acknowledgement, awareness, normalizing what you're going through. And then just, I always ask when somebody tells me what they're going through, if they're going through a grieving experience, one of my first questions is, what are you doing nice for yourself lately? Because that ultimately, you can't make other people do nice things for you, but you can do nice things for yourself.
What are some examples of nice things that someone can do for themselves?
Taking time to breathe, getting a really healthy snack, making yourself a nice dinner, buying yourself flowers, picking flowers out of your garden, doing some gardening, going on a bike ride, watching a stupid movie that you've been wanting to watch, but is like not something that other people want to watch. So you watch it on your own. Doing a little bit of, breathing in the bath, like taking a hot bath, journaling. So like anything, like really anything that you feel even a teensy weensy bit better because you did it for yourself. And like taking that actual time for you, because most of the time when we're grieving, we're like, I need to help everybody else. I need to do this and this and this for other people. But we don't remember that, like, we actually, if we want to continue helping other people, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, so important, so important. So, okay, so Serenity, awesome. Sounds like she says your answer to my question has been so helpful. So that is
so glad.
That is wonderful. And we have here Connie saying, I love working with Laura. She is amazing, and I have learned so much from her. The grief recovery method works for relationships with the living and those who have passed. So,
Connie,
such an awesome testimonial right there. Thank you, Connie. I love that. So that's a fantastic segue to move. I mean, you've already been kind of talking about it, but let's look more at the living grief that you mentioned earlier. So, yeah, I know I got divorced years ago, and that absolutely was very much a death that I had to process and move through.
Yes. Oh, chills all over. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It truly is. And so, and I think you being here and probably doing the work you do is informed by that experience, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And you can be so much more compassionate toward others because you've grieved that loss.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, it was the divorce and then death of my dad. But we don't need to get all into that. But yes, I can totally relate to what you're sharing about, one person before and a completely different person afterwards. And it's a journey, how things evolve over time. So,
it's funny that you say that about, losing your dad and going through divorce, because I feel like most people who are drawn to me, like interviewing me or working with me or anything, is like because they've gone through something themselves. And it's like, ooh, this is interesting, because, grief is a hard subject. Like it's kind of like in our society, sex, it's like they're kind of taboo, and it's like people are very uncomfortable because it's emotional. And so I think for me, having gone through and learned so much about grief over the last 10 years, there's nothing I'm afraid of talking about. because what else is there?
Right.
You know, like pretty much anybody can tell me anything and I won't be like, oh, you know, like there's no like, it's like, oh, like it might be, I might feel sad. I might feel like my heart dropping into my stomach, or like I feel feelings, but everything is a human experience, and it's all normal and natural that we feel the feelings that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love how you shared that prior to the experience of your mom passing away, that you didn't know what to say in situations when people would share that kind of news with you, and then you had your own experience. And so I love how you talked earlier about just even saying, well, that's normal. You know, that's normal to feel sad. What else have you learned to, or what can you share with us about that compassionate communication that we can say to someone when they're going through a tough time?
Totally. Yes. Well, I wrote a whole book about it.
I know.
So I have a lot to say, but I can pare it down to like 2 or 3 things. So the first thing I just want to say is that the beauty of compassionate communication is that we can all get better at it. Like it's a skill. It's not something that, like, some people are born more compassionate than others. Like it's more natural for them. And I also have to say, I used to suck at it. Like I called myself a silver linings person. I always was able to find the good in everything. And actually that's a gift and it's a curse, because what I didn't realize back then that I know now is that when you silver line something, especially for others, it's very diminishing, because you're at least da 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 da. And I wrote a whole blog called Letting Go of the At Least, because that's been a huge journey for me, because at least takes away from the person's pain. It actually does the opposite of normalizing. It tries to like make it better when that's not helpful. And so I always say, like, I love humans and I love people. So I've always been a kind and compassionate person. And I also often said the wrong thing. So like, if you're like, oh my God, I've said so many of the wrong things. So have I. I've said so many of the wrong things. And one of the things I really encourage you to do is see people as whole people. So even if they've gone through something really challenging, like as my mentor, Russell Friedman, said, they're not broken, they're brokenhearted. And
I love that.
So when we see somebody as brokenhearted rather than broken, we don't have to fix them. We might hope that their heart heals. We might send them love. We might be with them and like sit with them and offer, thoughts or prayers or peace or whatever it is that you want to offer. And we don't need to fix them. We just need to acknowledge, and Connie will say this because she always says, acknowledge and validate, acknowledge and validate, acknowledge and validate. That's pretty much all you got to do, is acknowledge what they're going through. So let's do a quick role play.
Okay.
Maybe like keep it like, it doesn't have to be super deep and dark, but like, give me something. It can be like, I lost my job, or I'm going through a breakup, or whatever it is. Something I'm like, I moved and I'm like really sad about it. So give me something and then I'll give you a little demonstration.
Okay. So yeah, just I'm making this making this up totally right now. Okay. Me and my boyfriend broke up, and he was, I spent all my time with him. If I wasn't at work, I was with him. And now I just feel so empty. And, what do I do with myself? And my world is turned upside down right now. I don't know what to do. I'm so sad about it.
Kim, I can't even imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry to hear that you're having to suffer through that really painful loss. And so were you guys together for a long time?
We were together for 6 years.
Oh, wow. That's a long time. Yeah, that's a lot of intimate interactions and a lot of time that you probably spent together. Are you longing for him? Do you miss him? Or are you feeling relief? What are kind of some of the feelings that are coming up?
It's a combination. I mean, yes, I miss him, but I also do feel that relief, because a part of me knew, okay, this wasn't going to be permanent. It wasn't going to last much longer. And so I'm aware sometimes that even when I miss him, that like, well, maybe it's not really him that I miss, but just the relationship, and, see how those two things blend together. And it's been really hard to shake.
Oh, yeah. And it's so, I just want you to know that it's super normal to feel like your world's turned upside down. You said, like, I feel like my world's turned upside down because we spent so much time together. And so when you are in, that kind of intimate relationship and then it's gone, it is like a death, so it's really normal and natural that you're feeling the way you are. And I just really appreciate you sharing it with me.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so I apologize for smiling because part of me was like trying to also just listen to what she was saying as I'm like making up my story. So ignore my role playing because I was wearing different hats there. But that was I love that, Laura. Thank you. that was wonderful.
So ultimately, it comes down to I can't imagine what you're going through, because when people say, "Oh my God, I went through a breakup too," so like here's a worst case scenario, right? So you're like, same situation. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going through a breakup. I've been with this guy for 6 years. We've been each other's world. I don't even know like what to do with myself. And I'm like, at least you didn't get married to him. Right? Like,
yes. Or when people say, oh, you think that's bad. Right?
Let me tell you about what I went through or what my friend went through. Yeah. Like those are not good things. And actually in my book, I outline all the things. I'm like, no story stealing, no one upping, no like, right. Like we're not comparing. And in the grief recovery, we talk about how like we don't compare losses because it either leads to diminishing somebody else or isolating them. So like say that you were like, I lost a child. And I was like, oh my God, that is the absolute worst loss. You're never going to feel better. Like I've heard that that's the only loss you can never recover from. Like, okay, now I've completely isolated you and told you that you're never going to feel okay again. That's comparing loss, even though I'm like trying to make you feel good that your loss is terrible. I'm also making you feel alone. Right. And then say you were to say like, oh, I'm going through this breakup. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, oh, come on. I thought something was really wrong. Like now I've completely diminished you. I've like diminished everything you're saying. And I'm comparing like, yeah, but you didn't get divorced. Like imagine if you got divorced, or imagine if your boyfriend died, like my boyfriend died or whatever, like that doesn't help either. So like what we say is that we don't compare. And in coaching, I don't know if you've heard this expression, but compare leads to despair. It's like comparing never helps anybody because it's like, sorry, are you getting bad light from me? I have like, the sun is setting.
It was definitely coming through, but it was kind of cool how it was coming through. It was like shining down on you.
I'm like an angel.
Yeah. I love that. And something I wanted to add, so I love that you acknowledge that you, didn't always know how to have this compassionate communication with other people, and we're a silver linings girl. I can definitely relate to that and totally agree that it's both a blessing and a curse. And I wanted to add that, so for anyone else out there who can identify with being a silver linings person, I've also learned that there are some people where it's a lot easier to just like you said, acknowledge and validate and just listen to them, be there for them. And then there are other people in our lives who we might slip into fear mode, because if they're hurting, it might freak us out because we don't want them to be hurting. And that like changes everything up. It's not as easy to be just compassionate. And that might sound backwards. That might not make sense, but I've learned that firsthand and had to catch myself. And, do you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share on that?
Sure. One of the things that I love doing most, especially with the closest people in my life, is I like to ask a question, which is, so I had a friend who was going through a really hard time with her a new husband. Like she had just gotten married and she was furious with him and everything. And my first inclination was like, do you want me to remind you of your vows? Like my old self would have just been like, yeah, but you guys are married. And like, I would have tried to tell her that she needs to like work it out. And in that moment, I was like, hey, do you need me to be like, hey, what a jerk? Or do you want me to be like, hey, I was at your wedding 6 months ago. Do you want like me to remind you that you are of your vows? And she's like, I want you to say what a jerk. And I was like, okay. And she's like, and when I like him again, I want you to like him again too. I was like, done. But like what was so great about it is that I asked her what she needed from me. Was she looking for like loyalty and like for like, you know, me to be like, yeah, that jerk, right? Or was she looking for me to like talk her off the ledge, right? To come back into the relationship. And so she told me. So sometimes like if somebody's grieving or sharing their grievance with you, you can say, even with a close person, like, do you want me to just listen? Or are you looking for support or advice? Because I'm willing to do any of those. Just tell me so I can support you best. And that seems to work really well for me, is like really just engaging with them and asking them what it is that they want at that moment. Because sometimes they don't want advice. They just want to be heard.
Right.
They're just venting and they just want to vent.
I love that.
Does that answer your question?
It totally does. And I've done that with a couple of people too. And it's nice to see how it works out. But I've even sometimes had hesitation because I'm like, is this even appropriate to ask? Because they might be thinking, don't you know what I need? Well, I don't want to like assume, you know? Yeah.
No. And we actually don't ever know what anybody needs because everybody's changed so consistently. And if they say, don't you know what I need? And you can say, no, that's why I'm asking you. Like, I want to know what you need, but I don't. And so, you know, even my husband sometimes, like, it's hardest, I think, with your partner and like your parents, sometimes siblings and like best friends, right? Like the absolute closest people in your life who you like most need and want to be compassionate with, but you're just like, oh gosh, I really am struggling with this. And like, so my husband will say, like, he'll have a bad day at work and he'll be like, oh, I'm so frustrated, I lost all this money. And the old me would have been like, well, at least you blah, 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 like made this much money today, or at least you're having a good month or whatever. And now I just say, oh man, that sucks. Like, yeah, that really is a bummer. And then he goes, yeah, well, I'll have a better day tomorrow. Like he auto corrects, like he self corrects because I didn't try to fix it for him. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So it's like, I just need to get out of trying to be the one who solves the problems for other people.
And isn't that takes some self-awareness and self-management. Yeah, practice for sure. I agree.
It's practice. It's just practice over and over and over and over. And I still am not perfect. Like there's no such thing.
Laura, I love what you've shared with us, and we're already at the 45-minute mark in our...
Oh my gosh.
I know. So I'm just going to quickly take a look here at the comments. We have some awesome comments coming through. Serenity, thank you so much for all your comments. Love it, love it. She's saying the greatest self-love is to only ever help others from the overflowing saucer of your already overflowing love and compassion in our cup. Absolutely, Serenity.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And oh, this is beautiful. Laura Jack, you are the mother we always desired to have.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And she's asking about the book link. Where can people find your book?
So they can go to laurajack.com/ no, wait, sorry, that's not right anymore. I changed it. I think it's just the compassioncodebook.com. Let me double check for you though, just so I don't mess it up. The compassion code.
Let's see here. I think
and they can, that'll be like, and that actually what's so cool about that is it comes with a 7-day guided compassion practice. So it says begin building your daily compassion practice without burnout. And so it's like a free gift, and then it's a link to get the book. So the compassioncodebook.com.
Yeah. Awesome. The compassioncodebook.com.
Yep.
Okay.
And what's the little, I call it the compassion code the compassion code companion audio series. It's like a daily audio for 7 days that basically, whether you read the book or not, just gives you little insights and inspirations about, you know, how to burn your. So it's my thing.
It froze a little on my end, so I don't know what you just said.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I said that's my thing.
That's her thing. That's her thing. Okay, so hello to those of you that are new here. I see Susan, and also Cheryl says thank you, and Connie says well, we saw that comment, but Connie also said that she loved your advice. Where did it go? I'm trying. There it is. Love that advice that you shared earlier. So yes.
Thank you.
Well, Laura, we've talked about a variety of things and just kind of gone with the flow of the conversation. Is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't already covered?
Like a takeaway, like something that they need to know, like a burning thing. Like, what does give me a prompt
to know? Yeah. Well, I love that you already gave us, I think, the biggest one: acknowledge and validate. I think that's like the heart of it right there. Acknowledge and validate, and then everything else can flow from there. How about, let's say someone's in that space, back to where you were, when you weren't so comfortable with this kind of stuff, and they're thinking, okay, I'm supposed to acknowledge and validate, but I'm still really uncomfortable. Any tips or insights for that moment?
My favorite thing is to suggest, or my favorite thing to offer here is speak from the heart, which is, I'm so uncomfortable right now. So say you were to tell me that your dad died.
Yeah.
And I was me 10, 11 years ago. Okay. Pre my mom dying. I would have been like, blah, 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 blah. Now what I would say is, oh man, Kim, I'm so sad that you're going through this. Like, I'm so uncomfortable because I wish I could make it better, but I know I can't. Like, I wish I had the right words to say, but I don't have the right words. There's no right words for this situation.
To just literally speak what's happening in the moment.
Yeah. It's like, so, and one little tiny story before I go, but my husband, when we first got engaged, he didn't like come up with a whole wedding, like engagement, like speech. He was like, I'm going to come to it in the moment. Like, I know it's going to be like really natural. And he's like, so he was so nervous that he basically talked himself through it. He was like, so I'm going to get on one knee now. And like, he talked himself. And so I'm like, oh, and then he's like, you're my best friend, right? I'm like, mm-hmm. He's like, you know that I love you, right? Yep. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get down on one knee now. I'm going to get out the ring now. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was so, like, it was so cute. And it's so funny because we still talk about it. Like, if he had said like some like really romantical, like Shakespearean speech, I wouldn't remember. But because he just like talked himself through it, it was so beautiful and perfect and vulnerable and cute and funny and whatever. And I think that if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad and I wish that I could take away all your pain, but I know I can't. Like, I feel like that speaks volumes, and that's all. Yes. Just as long as you're not like, at least they're in a better place. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially around death and even divorce, is that they forget that like who they're supporting. Like, when you say at least they're in a better place, that's about the person who's dead. It's not about the person who's here.
Right.
Right. So like, remember who your audience is. Your audience is the person who's going through the loss. So don't make it about the person who died.
Yeah.
Because it's not about them anymore. They're not here unless you want to share a heartwarming story about them, but ask permission first. So it's like, I actually have a really sweet story about your dad. Can I share it with you? And you'd be like, yeah, right? Because it's like, thank you. I want to know. Unless you hate your dad, and then maybe not. But that's why we ask permission.
That was beautiful. Yes, I completely agree with that. Speaking things in the moment allows the conversation to remain open and allows the person to feel heard. Even if the other person doesn't have a response for that, they will, there's just that energy flow versus, well, if it was, one of those other versions that we mentioned earlier, it just kind of closes everything off. So,
right. Well, and one of my favorite things about like when you don't know what to say is asking, would a hug be helpful? And like letting no be okay. Like, if they say no, like, don't make that personal. It's not about you. Like, that's just where they are in that moment. Maybe they don't want to cry. A lot of times people don't want to hug because they don't want to cry wherever you are. Like, they're like, I don't want to cry. And so they don't want to hug. And so, well, and then I'll say something like, well, if and when you want one, I'm always here.
Yeah.
So
I had a friend who recently lost her dad, and it's it just feels very timely because she recently acknowledged that prior to her dad passing away, she didn't know what to say to other people. And so when her dad died, I immediately wanted to she reached out to me and she let me know. And I wanted to talk, but I figured, I need to give her some time. And then I approached her a few weeks later and said, I would love to talk, are you open to talking? And she said, I would love to talk with you too, but no, she still wasn't ready. So then I reached out to her again, I think maybe a month later or something like that. And she still wasn't ready. And so it was kind of just, just connecting, but allowing her to, tell me when she's ready, basically. Yeah. It's not about me wanting to talk to her right now. It's about, when she's ready, then we can talk.
And one of the things that I say, and I know, again, this is advanced stuff, but I might say something like, when we connect, it doesn't only have to be about that. We don't have to dive right into your sadness or your grief or anything. I just want to be here for you as a friend. And that might mean going and get a coffee and talking about shopping. It doesn't have to be so intense. And it can be I'm okay with either. And so I'll support you in whatever way you have. Because one of the things I'm you're never ready. I think ready isn't a very, I don't like that word because nobody's ready. I think that you have to just agree to it. It's do you agree to connect so we can see where this conversation goes? I just want to be your friend and love you. And I have been through something similar, but we don't have to talk about this.
Yeah,
we can. Right. So anyway, I know we could talk about this for hours and days, probably.
I know. But. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I can tell that those who are here with us live are loving it too. So thank you so much to everyone who's been here. And Serenity, thank you for sharing the full book link. Before we go, Laura, I would love for you to share with us, because of course you have all this knowledge about grief and grief coaching, but I think, do you actually have two client audiences, two types of people that you work with? Is that something you'd like to share?
Kind of. It's funny because I think what I've realized in the last year is that everything I do is related to grief and compassion, but it's entering into all these different facets. So I just did a holistic business course about bringing compassion into businesses and into your own business. So how do you hire and fire with compassion? How do you network with compassion? How do you sell with compassion? Right. So I think that it's not so much that I have different audiences, granted, yeah, maybe. And I think it's just infusing compassion into all the facets of life, whether it's relationship, whether it's death, whether it's business, whether it's, children or whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think it's just about the communication piece. And so, I just love supporting people and having those really vulnerable conversations that can be really challenging, whether they're for living or dead people, it doesn't matter.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all those who've been here with us live. And Serenity says, this chat has been amazing. I love you ladies, Laura Jack and Kim O'Neill, coaching an Every Day is a New Day show. So thank you so much for sharing that, Serenity. And for all those who've been here with us live, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I absolutely believe that, oh my gosh, Laura has so much to share and it relates to all of us, right? I mean, this is also, you never know when this is going to happen. And so I love that you're actually bringing it into living grief, because not that we would necessarily want to practice, but there are always opportunities to practice this kind of conversation. So when those unexpected moments
especially with our climate.
Say that again?
Think about the climate of our, I was just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's just so important with all the shootings and all the terrible tragedies that are happening in our society. How can we support and be compassionate toward each other instead of pointing fingers and being hurtful and hateful, right? So this comes so important into our conversations like that as well.
Absolutely. So exactly. So okay, I love it. This has been wonderful. And for all those who are watching the replay, do go ahead and please also comment. Feel free to ask questions. We'd love to connect with you even after the show. People can find out more about you, Laura, by going to laurajack.com, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Okay, laurajack.com, and the link to her book, The Compassion Code. I don't want to botch the title, but I know it's a really awesome title.
Compassion Code book.com.
Awesome. And it's how to say the right thing when the wrong thing happens. So awesome.
Absolutely.
So thank you to everyone who's been here. To find out about future Every Day is a New Day shows, you can go to @KimO'NeillCoaching on Facebook and find out about future upcoming shows. And I'll be adding more here in the near future. And to find out more about me and the coaching that I do, you can go to KimO'NeillCoaching.com. And as always, remember that every day is always a new day. No matter where you are today, does not have to be where you are tomorrow. And I love Laura's tips earlier about, take a bath. I don't think you said this one, but I'm going to say it. Give yourself a hug. Sometimes, just sort of that human connection. And sometimes it's literally your own arms that can actually make you feel some of that if you need some of that.
So, and Kim, can I say one last little thing?
Absolutely.
To add to your show, which every day is a new day and every moment is actually a new moment. Sometimes when I have somebody who's grieving, I'll just remind them, don't say I'm having a bad day, because then you've pretty much ruined the rest of the day. Say I'm having a bad moment, because that moment now is already over.
Okay, so I've had other guests say, every moment is a new moment. Yes, and I completely agree. But I love what you just said. Yes, don't encapsulate the whole day and brand it as bad. Just the moment. The moment. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a chance, because then you have any chance to start over. Yeah. Right? It's okay, this moment sucks. I don't want to feel this way, and I'm going to feel differently in a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim, for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.